A weed is a plant growing in the wrong place, someone said. In that case, these pecan trees, which grow like weeds in my herb garden, be considered a weed. They are annoying to me as a weed. Don't really want a pecan tree growing in my herb garden. But if we shifted our mindset just a little bit, I'm clipping these down, not pulling them out. So you're actually doing a work under the ground. So we shift our mindset just a little bit, we can look at it different. We'll have a different perspective. Those plants that we call weeds can also have some very useful functions. You know, I think about the dandelion in particular. Our ancestors brought the dandelion here on purpose because of its medicinal properties. And we try very hard to eradicate it. But the thing is, these what we call weeds, most of them are edible. They have medicinal properties. They bring in the pollinators. They increase the biodiversity in our soil. They act as a dynamic accumulator. They, bringing up the nutrients from the subsoils with their roots, like the comfrey, which many consider a weed. Things are changing about comfrey, though, the way that it's looked at. I grow a lot of what is considered weeds for my food. And they also have a lot of medicinal purposes. So we need to have a little bit of a mindset. There has to be a balance because these weeds bring in the pollinators, and that's what I want to talk about, our pollinators. And I wanted to talk about pollinators and the weeds, per se, that we grow, and eradicating them, what that would do to these pollinators. Dr. Talamine, he presents a startling account of the present state of our natural environment. According to him, there's 432 species of the North American birds that are threatened with extinction. 432 species of the North American birds that are threatened with extinction. Today, there's 1.5 billion fewer breeding birds than there were 40 years ago. There's been a 96.4% decline in monarch butterflies. Now, these are some startling statistics to me. Everyone knows that we depend on insects for pollination, for much of our food and our livestock food. Without insects or other pollinators, humans, we couldn't live on this earth. I hope I have your attention right now. And here's what we can do to change things. Make a commitment to plant some native plants, either trees, flowering plants, shrubs, weeds on your property. We can take responsibility in our own backyards. Insects help to maintain plant diversity, which is critically important. Insect families contribute the most energy to our food system as pollinators. Our many native bee species in most areas require flowering plants to be available from March through November for food and nesting sites. If you're not growing any of these, they don't have a place to come in your area, your yard in particular. And if you're growing a garden, you want the pollinators. They are our best friend. And we need to be sure we have a habitat for them to come to in our yard. Now, throughout my garden, I have different types of flowers all throughout. Now, these are edible flowers, so they're not a waste of space in my garden. So don't think, oh, this is just going to take up space in my garden. Number one, you will benefit through your harvest, but I only use things that are edible. So these flowers that I plant throughout my garden, they're edible. And your flowering trees, those are fruit trees. Or things like the Rose of Sharon, beautiful flowering shrub. The flowers are edible. So you're not just taking care of the insects, the pollinators, the bees, you're taking care of yourself. You have something that you can eat. Now, are you going to make that your main meal? No. But they are beautiful. They add something to the landscape, and they take care of the pollinators, which are critical to growing food. And I think we would all agree that every single person on the face of the earth needs food. And pollinators, they take care of like 90% of our food. And without them, we would not have it. Now, it's really easy to plant something to bring in the butterflies. I have one area right here. It's about a 4x4, so it's really not that big an area, and it's very pretty. When the plants are in bloom, they have these beautiful purple flowers, and they stay in bloom for months and months. And so it's very pretty for me to enjoy, and the butterflies come up and go crazy around it. So do the hummingbirds, by the way. And so I'm giving the butterflies a habitat, and they're pollinators. Well, we don't think about that. But more important, did you know that there's other species that rely on butterflies and moths for food? Speaking of, butterfly just flew over my head. So butterflies are very important pollinators. Our pollinators, as I said, they help over 90% of the world's flowering plants create fruits and seeds. Without them, plant communities worldwide would collapse. Now, I'm not trying to be a sad Sally or a doomsday announcer. I'm just saying that pollinators are very important, and you know, humanity has come through and has tried to pretty much sterilize our land. We strip it of all the natural plants that grow, the native plants that grow, and put in what we desire to have in there without a thought as to the community that was already here that we are destroying. And that community that I'm talking about are the pollinators. You know, and another thing on the natural weeds, which I think that we should, you know, I'm not saying that you just let weeds go crazy in your yard and your garden. You see me cutting things out all the time and pulling things out all the time. But there are natural, native weeds that you can let go, that you can eat, that the pollinators will enjoy, and that way both ends of the spectrum are being taken care of, the human end and the insects, the pollinators, the bees, what have you. They can be taken care of. And these weeds, you know, they grow like crazy. Well, the reason is because they're native to your area. They are very adapted to the area. They can go through the droughts. They can make it through the cold. Why not take advantage of that, especially in things that are very desirable? Now, a lot of people don't like dandelions. They say they're bitter. Well, we need that contrast of bittersweet in our diets. We need that contrast. But in the springtime, when dandelions are first coming out, they're not bitter. They're sweet. If you get the young, fresh dandelions, they're very sweet. So, you know, and the lamb's quarters grows like crazy. Why? Because it's adapted to the area. It's from the area. And they will take the heat. The lamb's quarter that I grew this year, now this was my first year to grow the lamb's quarters, I'm admitting that. But every year I'm trying to add something to the mix. So this year I added the lamb's quarters. Hey, Carl. Oh, you're wet. Yeah, I know. This is Carl. He was a gift from my granddaughter, Caitlin. Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. You don't wait. So every year I'm trying to add something to the mix, and this year it was the lamb's quarter, and it did grow very well, and it grew all through summer. Now we had a very hot summer. I mean, 111 for a couple of weeks, and higher for a couple of weeks. Over 100 for over a month, so about a month and a half I think it was. So we had some extreme weather, but that lamb's quarter and the dandelion just grew like crazy. The corn salad grew like crazy. These are all the purslane. These are all weeds, but they grew like crazy in the heat. So there's something to be said for our wild edibles. I don't really like to call them weeds. They're wild edibles, and they benefit not just us, but the pollinators. And we really have to start paying attention to our pollinators, because we depend on them for our food. Every human around the globe depends on pollinators for their food. And our pollinators depend on the wild edibles for their food. So we have to provide for them a habitat. And there's many things that the pollinators like that we can eat, so it won't be taking space away from your garden. So I hope that you will give it a thought. And as you're planning your garden for next year, I'm already planning my spring garden. But as you plan your garden next year for spring, include the pollinators. What is it that you can grow that will help the pollinators? Because we need them, and we have to take care of them. You know, I'm one that believes that when the Creator placed us here, the first humans He placed in a garden, and He told them to care for it. And I think that is still our job today, is to care for this earth and to take care of every creature on it. That's our job, because we are number one on the planet, and that position gives you some sense of responsibility to take care of those that are under you, provide for those that are under you. I hope I've given you just a little food for thought today. Thank you for letting me ramble just a little bit, but I think that it's a very important thing. When I saw Dr. Taylor's report on the shape of the pollinators and in our country, and the birds and the decline, and it just kind of weighed heavy on my heart, and I thought I really needed to share. So thank you for joining me. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Give me a thumbs up. And this video in particular, I really hope you'll share. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye. I do have a website that I will post in the description below. If you don't know what native plants in your area, flowering plants you can grow There's a website that can help you with that for the Natural Wildlife Society, and I will put that link below so that you can go in there, get your area, and find out what is native to your area.